Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Critical Fools podcast. This is episode number 47, and this week we will be reviewing the year 2000 movie Traffic, which is directed by Steven Soderbergh. And I think I've seen several of his films, although some of them are kind of blanking on me right now. But nonetheless, he's been a director for the past approximately 3 to 4 decades, since I believe the late 80s. And this was a pretty interesting film that had a unique sort of take on the war on drugs. It was actually inspired by a 1989 British miniseries that focused on many different aspects of the of sort of the drug industry in Britain, as it pertains to sort of the local drug dealers, some of the suppliers, and people actually growing poppy fields in Afghanistan. So this took a lot of inspiration from that miniseries, but just applied it to more of the U.S. Drug setting. So yeah, Chris, I kind of wanted to get your initial thoughts on this movie.
Yeah, I mean, that's a loaded question, but I'm gonna just say this movie was I thought it was well crafted. The pacing was great.
What did you think of the performances from the actors? First of all,
yeah, I was gonna say obviously this is an A-list. If you look at the casting. I'm a big Michael Douglas fan. Was it Benicio's in this film?
mm-hmm.
Catherine
Zeta-Jones.
I'm missing a couple of names.
Don Cheadle, another big one.
Cheadle. There was also that other person that's pretty. It's not as famous. He's like a B level.
Luis Gomez. Guzman. Dennis Quaid.
Dennis Quaid. Yeah. So I thought like they all like. I mean, actually, it's interesting that you could see which actors were actually a tier above the other ones a little bit, like the marginal differences, but they all gave great performances. Like I said, the pace was great because it's like a three storylines, right? They follow let's call it the more of the
so how they
angle. Sorry,
how they separated is the Mexico storyline, the Wakefield storyline, and the Ayala DEA storyline.
Yeah, I just went like Mexico DEA and then the politicians.
Wakefield, politicians.
Yeah. So that was like you said. That I didn't realize it was based on the 1989 British drama, but it makes sense stylistically because he wanted to convey different aspects of the war on drugs, supposedly. And I thought like we'll get into that later.
Sure,
but I will say that this film, like, I call it I bet this was a blockbuster type level film because it felt everything blockbustery. The pace was good. The 8 cast actors. It reminds me when we did.
The budget was about $50 million on this film.
Yeah, so when we did Hotel Rwanda, I had the same vibe of like this film is like, it's very digestible for an American audience. And I mean, you're just trying to like get me, but I'm gonna hold off. And I have to give the film credit for that.
Out of curiosity, who did you think had the strongest performance in this film?
Oof,
that's a tough one, right?
Yeah.
There was some very good acting in this film.
I'm curious, what was yours?
Benicio del Toro, but I'm a little biased because I like most of his acting performances.
Yeah,
he's really strong in almost any.
Right now,
any character he plays.
Yeah, right now when you asked me that, I was debating Benicio or Michael Douglas. It was like that.
Yeah, I could see that. Michael Douglas is very good too. I thought Don Cheadle was okay.
He was solid, but maybe my bias is that I thought obviously Hotel Rwanda he was like the star. And
and maybe it's because he played a DEA agent in this film that you didn't like him.
I mean, I love the DEA. What are you talking about? I mean, I trust our law enforcement all the time.
Oh, really? Did you like the final scene in this film with Don Cheadle?
Yeah, whatever. I mean, that's cheating. I told you that off script.
Oh, I know. Anyway, personally, I really liked Benicio in this film. I thought he had the strongest performance, as he does in almost, I think, every film I've seen him in.
Let me flip the question. What was your favorite storyline?
Honestly, because it was some of the more unique, because I've seen so many films and sort of miniseries and TV shows focused on different aspects of sort of the war on drugs. here in the U.S. One that often doesn't get, aside from I would say The Wire, because The Wire was a very unique, separate sort of TV series. But like you look at Narcos Mexico, a lot of it always often focuses on the cartels and the U.S. fighting the war on drugs in Mexico or in foreign countries, but not a lot of series focus on sort of the impact here in sort of upper class communities. I would probably say the politician angle with the Wakefield and him and his family.
Fair.
I mean, the Mexico storyline, you know about corrupt politicians, right? Their ties to certain drug wars. I mean, they even talk about sort of. I'm blanking on his name. The General Salazar, who like is infamously known for his sort of connection to the Juarez cartel in the late '90s, right? I mean, that's sort of a story that's been told repeatedly in many different aspects of different on-screen media. So I thought the most unique to me was the Wakefield storyline.
That's the one you like the most, then? Okay, that's fair.
Well, because it's not one that's often told on screen.
I think it's fair.
What about you? I'm gonna ask you the same question. What was your favorite storyline?
Could you guess what it is?
No.
Do you want to guess real quick?
It's got to be the Mexico storyline.
Yeah. I mean, you give me some footage of Mexico, especially the border. It gets my heart rolling. But
I'm yeah.
That's a bias, though.
In all actuality, I thought it was going to be the DEA storyline.
Yeah, okay, dude. Yeah, sure. If they did a different DEA storyline, maybe, but not that one. I think to your point, like the one I found most enjoyable was the Wakefield one. It's definitely more unique to your point, especially about the treatment angle, and then they tie that with the story really well, and maybe we'll touch upon that.
Yeah, I mean, so I've also seen Mayans, and there's been a lot of focus on sort of the border towns. So I couldn't say that was super unique in a lot of storylines.
Yeah, I'm not saying that's why I say it's a bias, because for me, I have a bias towards like, films or footage that are based in Mexico, so I can't really I have to cop up for that. Even like next year when we do more pods, I have a Mexican film in the back pocket. So that's just the bias, and I own up to that and not apologize for it. So
also, I found it interesting that they decided to look at sort of at least with the Wakefield case or a storyline. I found it interesting they chose Cincinnati as a location, but it kind of makes sense because it's sort of in a more Midwestern town that's definitely been impacted by some loss of jobs, manufacturing, things like that, and you can see some of the decay in the city of Cincy. I actually know someone who's from very close to or like right outside Cincy, and he's like, Cincy's cool to visit. He's like, but there's some very rough places. He's like, you wouldn't want to be caught. He's like, or you get caught dead right away. So it was just interesting seeing that aspect. I've personally never been to Cincinnati or actually Ohio for that matter.
Yeah, I mean, one of the more powerful scenes is when okay, we're jumping around, but just to give some tidbits, the Michael Douglas's character, can't remember his name actually. He has a daughter that
Robert Wakefield.
Yeah, Wakefield. He has a daughter that basically becomes like a drug addict, and is unfortunately this ends up in the stereotype of like selling her body for money, therefore for drugs, and it's prostitution. It's pretty rough. But there's this scene in the car with her supposed boyfriend, where he just goes off of he tries to tell off Robert about like how he's like, because he says like, you bring my daughter to this kind of place, and he's just like, hey, hold your, and he gives this whole speech about like, how do you think these people feel that they're being asked by rich white kids like drugs this, drugs that, can I get drugs, and they make quick cash, and like that's the best cash they can make like.
Basically, you've created the system that you and you're sort of insulated from all of this, even though you're supposed to be the drug czar.
And he gets all quiet because I think it finally clicks in his brain that like that's not what he's referring to, or that's what's it about. Like he just wants to get his daughter out.
Yeah, but at the same time, I mean, he's supposed to be right. The drugs are on the war on drugs. Yet that's an area within the U.S. that is so, and he's focused right on dealing with the source in Mexico. But then he goes there, and you see sort of the decay and sort of the effect of drugs and drug policy of the U.S. here in the United States.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, yeah, I never hear any politicians talk about how we need to, advocate for more drug treatment programs or try to do things to bring jobs back to these areas that have just been, all the jobs have left, so a vacuum's been created, and then it's been filled by drugs.
Yeah. I mean, that was part of the realization he had as a character. Right? Part of his character arc is realizing that treatment is part of the conversation, and like he can't just be a drug czar that's like it's a war, like a warlike mentality. And so he, again, this will never happen in real life, but he like dramatically steps away from the podium and walks out the door. But part of it, like to your point, that storyline's really like, I think even less story structure, but even the story structure is like one of the better ones because you see how like his worldview is shaped, and this happens to everybody, right? Like our world perspectives are often shaped by our real life experiences, and that his story arc with his daughter shapes how he ends up viewing the war on drugs. You know, as a politician, he gets all the reports about obviously Mexico and the DA, but he sees it firsthand how drugs just destroy the person, and like it's a systemic problem that's no drug czar can really just solve. Man.
Well, what was a really heartbreaking scene to me is like when he catches his his daughter's gone down more and more on the war on sort of the path with drugs, and his wife is just frustrated because she's just going. Well, what was also crazy was what the wife was saying, and she's just being a little experimental. I was just like, that's the stupidest shit. I was like, you can be experimental with marijuana. I was like, but she's delving into like strong drugs. Like this is no joke, like heroin and cocaine. I was like, and you're just as a mom, you're saying like it's okay, and you see sort of that the effects of that style of parenting just lead her down a pretty bad path. And what was heartbreaking was when Robert, played by Michael Douglas, comes home and he knocks on the bathroom, and she like hides her like drug paraphernalia on top of the shelf, and she's obviously like high. She is on one, and like you can see it in her eyes, and he looks all around and he finds all of her pipe basically on top of it. And that was a pretty heartbreaking scene because she's just out of it, doesn't care, and he's just like frustrated. Yeah. Part of it was because he's never around, so he's not there to be the father for his daughter. So it's not really surprising that he doesn't really know what's going on with her life. He just thinks, I've provided you hear all this, provided you with good school, good opportunity, right? You're supposed to do the right thing, supposed to, be on the straight and narrow, but you're not there to really parent your kid.
Yeah, for me, the heartbreaking scene was when he actually finds his daughter and the
of course.
Dude, she's like half conscious. What's that guy gonna do? Like, I was just like, that's disgusting. I actually had to like almost like a little vomit in my mind, dude. I was just like, ugh.
I agree, but I'm sure that's happened before.
100% it happens.
Sadly.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
Crazy. I don't know how another human being can.
But he also look.
I don't know how a human being can take advantage of whatever.
I gotta say, the more I'm talking about it, I think Michael Douglas is the best performance because he has one of the more memorable lines at the end, right? Like he says at the end of when his daughter's going through treatment and she's saying like some days she feels great, other days she doesn't, which is normal for somebody going through that kind of traumatic experience. He says like, I'm here to support my daughter, but also to listen. I thought that was very important. Like that little line, like just listen to, these recovering addicts, I'm going to say in this, terminology for the film. And I thought that was a very memorable line, and even how he said it was very like, it was solid. Like it's a simple line, but it was like good delivery. I was just like, okay, that's a top actor.
So here's a question for you. This is obviously, I think this film tried to at least touch many different aspects of the war on drugs in kind of a unique way. I also really like the choice to use different color gradients to separate the storylines. I thought that was a sort of a unique little touch. This is around the same time that the film Amores Perros came out, which had a unique sort of style of having three different stories converge on one another. And this one kind of did the same thing, although it didn't. They didn't all come together in a culminating end. It was just more showing different stories and how drugs sort of affect the different people's lives, right? But I'm kind of curious. How do you think this? How do you think this film did as a job when compared to another type of unique series? And obviously, it's different than a movie, but like The Wire, because that tried tackling different aspects of the war on drugs as well.
I mean, you're asking me to compare like a movie that's mediocre to greatness. I don't really like that's not a question. What's the next topic? No, seriously.
Okay, so out of curiosity, what did you think was a weak point of this film?
To me, the weak point of this film is that, and it's I think it's part of the restriction of being a film, is that it focuses on, I think, very well. Like, I would be honest, I bet even 21 years ago, I bet you people were talking about treatment. I think like all those storylines, in a way, are just kind of like they're how do I say?
They're a little
vanilla. They're not posing other, like, I would say, bigger questions. Like, something I think about sometimes is like, we capture all these cartel guys, like Chapo or whatever, but we're not naive, right? We know that, like, The Wire touches upon this a little bit. We know that the money isn't just going into the pockets of Mexican politicians. There's probably American
politicians.
Yeah, American
politicians.
Look
at the Pandora Papers.
Yeah, that are probably benefiting off this war on drugs. Even maybe like the DA, we know, is not like innocent. And so I go once again, like, I feel like this movie was just a trigger to me.
Do you remember, or I don't know if you heard from the Pandora Papers, but it got released. And this is kind of an aside, but it's kind of the same thing where, like, people talk about how much money Delaware gets in terms of, these weird little LLCs just pop up, and they're basically like little business fronts, right, to try to launder money. But South Dakota's overtaken them, and one of the biggest crooks with the sugarcane monopoly in the Dominican Republic, his family was found opening like a $50 million trust in South Dakota. And so that got released from the Panama Papers, the Pandora Papers.
Yeah, I heard about the South Dakota.
Yeah, but like we talk about human rights, right? Abuses abroad, and like how we sort of condone. I was like, but we're happy to take their money.
Yeah, I mean, it's business, right? Like, that's the thing. Like, my issue now, maybe because I know a lot about the war on drugs, unfortunately, is that like we're only comfortable talking about certain aspects of the war on drugs. I mean, treatment has definitely changed. To your point, like, I don't think that was maybe that prevalent in the 80s and maybe 90s, but I think now more people talk about it. But definitely nobody talks about
but there's
the money that's going.
There's so much difference between talking and actual action. I don't see.
Oh, there's definitely no action.
What?
There's definitely no action.
Yeah, I mean, like, everyone knows you should try to get people into treatment to try to, help get their lives back on track. But it's sort of a weird disconnect where, right, oftentimes if you talk about things that might try to help people's lives, you might be viewed as sort of victimizing people who are in these situations, and that's what I don't think a lot of people are trying to do, right? I don't think I'm sure there are some people, but personally, like, I don't think most people try to vilify people who are addicts, right? I think people want to try to treat them and help them. But I find it funny because I've heard some people say, just acknowledging or trying to suggest treatment, it means that you're victimizing, like, these people. And I think if you don't try to help them, you're victimizing them personally.
What do you think of the Mexican general's line about addiction?
Remind me.
He says basically because Robert Wakefield asked him, like, how in Mexico do you treat the addicts? And he was like, they overdose and die, and that's the treatment plan. Basically saying, like, addicts die.
Yeah. I mean, it was. And I know I brought this.
Go ahead. I'm asking two things, though. I'm asking what you think of that line, but also the portrayal, the Americanized portrayal of a Mexican character saying that. Because I'm not so sure a lot of, like, maybe Mexican elites, but I bet there's a lot of people in Mexico.
No. You know who was saying this, though, too? You got to remember, take your emotional portrayal of that event. You know who was saying it, right? Was it Salazar, who ended up working on consignment for Amado Carrillo Fuentes, right? So it's not like it was just any dude from Mexico saying this. This is like one of the most like crooked people, arguably in Mexican history. What do
So
I think about that?
Good.
I think it was cold and like showed really a lack of any humanity. It reminds me of like a lot of the policy of Duterte, who was prime minister of the Philippines, who's basically told his military at one point, and I don't know if he's still upholding this policy, but to shoot any addicts on sight. Right? I mean, they had like an absolute zero tolerance towards drug addicts, which is insane. And I don't personally think that that's the best policy or that should be sort of the national directive. Right. And basically what he was, Salazar was saying, he's like, we don't care. And Salazar obviously doesn't care. Why would he care about treatment when he's getting paid by the people who are paying, by these addicts who are basically filling the coffers of the Juarez cartel, and he's getting money from the Juarez cartel to try to take out the Tijuana cartel?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know if he actually said that in real life.
No,
would I be surprised? Would I be surprised if he said that? Probably not.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, make no mistake, Chris. I mean, you and I know this as well with Mexican. What did Hank Gonzalez famously say? A poor politician, or a politician is poor, is a poor politician. Yeah. So they say crooked.
Why you gotta bring up that like douchebag, dude? I don't want to hear his name, dude.
Because my whole point is like certain Mexican politicians have a storyline of having little care for their constituency.
Little care? You mean zero?
Yeah. I mean, you triggered me months ago when you showed me that gosh darn Vice video going down to Guerrero, showing the community who was trying to. They had to arm their kids to try to protect their family because there had been so many kidnappings. And then you see, AMLO go down there and act all self-righteous like they're being poor parents because who on earth would want to arm their kids? It's like, you piece of garbage. Why don't you go send down the military to try to protect these people? But you don't care about them because you're just a Mexican City elite.
That's what he is too. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my. I can't stand the arrogance or hypocrisy. You claim to care about the poor and the indigenous, and yet you sort of judge them when they're just trying to protect themselves and their families. Oh man, that video that triggered the heck out of me when you said that.
He's got to bend his back to protect the teachers union. So.
Woo! Well, yeah. Not to mention his just buddies in politics.
All right, going to I guess this ties into the Mexican storyline a little bit. I guess regarding that storyline, is there anything that like either bothered you or piqued your interest a little bit that you think of before, or something that you're like, hey, I think they could have handled this better? Like either way, just in general, anything that's of interest of that storyline.
The Mexican storyline? No, I just found it funny how they were both trying to be snitches for the DEA, just trying to get paid. I mean, and that's another aspect on sort of local law enforcement level in Mexico. Oftentimes, a lot of these people take bribes, and part of it that people don't realize is because they're paid so poorly, right? It's not a shock to know that they were, at least in the 90s, they were making like $300 a month. It's not really, you can't really pay them that and then expect them to be the most incorruptible people on the planet. Is what I will say. I mean, we even pay police fairly decently here in this country, and yet it's not uncommon to hear cases of corruption come out against law enforcement here in the United States. I mean, you can look at the LAPD in the 80s and 90s, and you can look at the Detroit PD in the late 80s. Yep. Plenty of corruption cases that have come about.
Yep, that's true. I still gotta watch the documentary you recommended about.
Oh, Highway Rick or White Boy Rick. Very good.
White Boy Rick, yeah. But yeah, for me, the Mexico storyline, I think the only thing that I found, I think they
I just found it funny that they were both being snitches, and then they both said they wouldn't snitch.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me, something that the film does right, to its credit, is kind of like through cinema show that like, if you live in, San Diego or even in San Ysidro, like to go back and forth between the border is really not difficult, and you can do business on both sides in the same day. Mm-hmm. And I think even the TV show Narcos doesn't do that.
They touched upon it a little bit in terms of La Zeta, which was the actual magazine in real life, but in the show is La Voz, right? They did all their printing on the San Diego side and imported the papers back into Mexico.
But to your point about like the style, they tied it. I don't know if it was by design, but they tied in, those splitting splitting the storylines and those cuts really well. Where like it jumped from like San Diego, like back to the San Diego to et cetera, et cetera. And I thought that was well done. Just I think that should highlight, because I know a lot of people are like, if I didn't know that area, like it wouldn't just become intuitive to me that like it is that easy. Like I don't think some people who, like to your point, who are in Ohio or in like let's say New Jersey understand like dynamics.
Well, you got to remember this film was also 21 years ago, so this is fresh off. This is before Chapo really became huge, right? Like he was starting to build up the Sinaloa cartel. Amado Carrillo Fuentes had died about 3 years earlier. Salazar's arrest was about 3 years earlier. So you're really focusing on the timeline of the war on drugs and during the 90s. Right, a lot has sort of changed in terms of dynamics.
That Baja California cartel is very strong. I'll tell you that much. So the
Tijuana cartel.
Yeah, they're strong. They always maintain.
At that point, they were weakening.
No, but I mean like strong in the sense that like they lost like a reference to the show, but that the female character is still in theory running that cartel. So
it's almost a defunct cartel now.
Well, I mean they still operate.
I'm just saying
that they
can look up
survival skills. Like they've been,
yeah, but they're like three of the family members are already in jail. I think she's on hiding. Like they're basically done. The one who's like really running things right now, and no one really talks about him enough in terms of his, like, I'm not saying he's a fantastic human being, obviously not, but what's really impressive is El Mayo has never been captured, and he's been in the drug scene in Mexico for about 50 years now.
Yeah, but he might be dead for all we know, accidental fall or something. He would be really old now, right?
We don't know.
Yeah, I think right now, like obviously, there's, I don't want to get into too deep, but like there's a lot of proxy. I meant more like usually when a cartel like loses their head guy, it kind of collapses because the power structure is like a gang.
But then 5 other come up.
Yeah, I mean obviously the Tijuana cartel is like like I said on the decline, but I've been surprised how like it's never like fully just even with all the hiccups, because usually that's what happens. Like Chapo happened and there's a power struggle.
It just downsizes. Well, there's drug struggle or struggles in terms of other gangs that sort of come up.
Yeah, it's more like they have a lot of outsiders encroaching.
Yeah,
but usually cartels collapse with
La Familia, and then there's the Nuevo Generación, right? Las Zetas. That's what happened when the Juarez cartel. The Gulf cartel sort of started declining. Then all of a sudden, the Zetas formed, which was basically the enforcers for the Gulf cartel, the ex-military. And it's really interesting to see how sort of like the military often gets where people who are done with the military in Mexico, how they often get picked up by cartels, right? Because they pay pretty well.
Actually, all this Mexico talk, when we're off camera, I have one small story that you're going to find funny. But
you have that, but and then at the flip side, I mean, because we gotta keep it consistent, right? That's not a storyline that's kind of unique to Mexico. I mean, once military men get done here, oftentimes they get picked up by private military companies so that they can go take contracts abroad, and they're not really working for anyone. They're just paid on contract, and they make tons of money doing so.
Yeah, lots of money.
Yeah, I saw some interviews by some dudes. They're saying you can make 4 times as much in a private sector as a military contractor than you can in working in the military. I'm like, that's pretty nuts. They're making like close to $200,000.
Okay, so anything else on the Mexico storyline you wanted to touch upon? I know we're not really going sequentially.
Can we get to your favorite storyline?
Okay. Yeah. I'll let you take the lead on the DEA one.
Yeah, anyway, so this film focuses basically on the political side in terms of drug policy from the top, and our drug czar, who basically is designed to try to improve drug policy here in the U.S., and then you have the other storyline of sort of the Mexican cops, and then you have the final storyline with Don Cheadle and Luis Guzman, who are both DEA sources, and they work, I think, on the San Diego side, right?
Yep.
Yeah, in San Diego, California, and they basically try to arrest several smaller fish there. And who they first take out, they basically put on a sting operation for. I forgot who the guy's name is, but I've seen him in so many films. Miguel Ferrer. No, that was Eduardo Ruiz. There's another guy I've seen in a lot of films. I'm blanking on his name, but he's been in a lot of different appearances. But basically, they get someone to rat up, and he ends up ratting on his partner, who is Miguel Ferrer, aka Eduardo Ruiz in the film, who's like sort of he's a businessman, but in reality, he's a drug dealer whose wife is Catherine Zeta-Jones. Right, and it sort of focuses on the novel or the noble fight to fight drugs at the DEA level, right? I mean that's kind of what it is. But what ends up happening is, their main. I'm trying to remember exact story or like exact timelines, but what ends up happening is basically his partner, who's going to testify. They basically try to put many hits on him, and eventually I believe they do end up killing him.
Yep.
Right outside the courtroom, and it's because they were supposed to go. That's right. They contacted someone to actually plant a car bomb, but they don't go to the car bomb. They end up walking, and he shoots them from the other side of the fence, and they all get taken out, or like they end up taking the assassin out.
Yeah, the assassin gets killed because the cartel realizes that he's the leak. Remember?
Wait, or maybe I'm blanking on something.
Yeah.
Remind me.
So you got the car bomb right? I think it was Flores, right? He ends up getting picked up by Benicio del Toro's character, and then he ends up telling the general like all the crap, and then he gets out, and then that's who
right.
That's who they assumed the leak was. When we later learned that it was actually the financial guy for I forgot the.
That's right. That's right.
Anyways,
that's what happened.
Let me just fix the scene. So
fix it up because maybe I forgot something.
Yeah,
in it.
He's not gonna go. They don't like. He wanted to kill the guy that's gonna testify, the Eduardo Ruiz guy, right? But he doesn't go to the car bomb because luck, right? So Catherine Zeta-Jones says like, "Hey, shoot him now." So he gets up out of the car, and then he gets shot in the back through the assassin. Once he starts shooting, but he survives. The testifying guy ends up getting killed because he gets poisoned. Remember the breakfast?
Yeah, that's right.
And so, and the DEA guys missed it. But yeah, it's like, and so again, like we skipped this because it's like a minor plot point. But basically, the who ended up being revealed as the leak was the financial guy. Was the financial guy? Yeah.
Yeah, and he put two and two together.
Yeah, and he gets killed.
Yep.
But basically,
there were like two parts of that aspect that I just didn't put together. So that makes it, and it was kind of minor plot points, really.
Yeah. I mean, not that minor. I mean, it was a big part.
I mean, it's significant, but in reality, right? They're trying to in the grand picture, they're trying to show three different aspects of the storyline, right? One on the DEA side, sort of the like I said, the noble fight and the war on drugs. One from the sort of the higher political side, and then one from the Mexico side. It's really what they were trying to show, and also on the politician side, how it's affecting drug users here in the U.S.
Yeah.
All right, that's pretty much it.
So yeah, what did you think of that storyline?
I mean, I thought it was kind of cliche, right? It's not. You often see, right? You even in as critical. I wouldn't even say as critical, even though they try to be critical at times in Narcos with the DEA side or like fight on the war on drugs and how sort of meaningless it is, right? They often sort of glorify some of these like storylines or the fight on the war on drugs, but even like when the drugs are, which is played by Michael Douglas's character, right? He goes and they're asking. He goes to like the border at one point, right? And one of the guys basically says, it's futile, man. I'm like, he's like, there's no way to like not stop like this war on drugs. Is essentially what he tells him, right? And I can't remember his exact line, but in so many words, that was it. And then he goes down to to the drug part. So my whole point with that is, right, some of these agents act like they're doing a lot, and they're stopping some bad people, but at the end, you're never going to fully solve this. Right? It's a supply and demand thing, and people like drugs. You're never going to stop it, and there's too much money in the game. Right? As soon as you take one out, it's like Medusa, another 5 will come up.
Yep.
It's pretty much what it is. It was just funny. I mean, they just represent sort of and I don't even think they were trying to glorify them in this movie. It's just they were trying to show like this is, I think, the sort of thought process of people who join the DEA. It's like they're really going to make a difference, and on a small level, I guess they kind of are, but in reality, they're not doing anything to really dent the war on drugs. Right? Every time they seize a 5-ton shipment, there's still 200 million tons that are getting through.
Exactly.
Right. So it's like you got to ask yourself: are you really making that big a difference?
That's one of the realistic points of the film. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty much it. As far as like Don Cheadle and Luis Guzman, I mean, they did fine. I don't think there was anything super standout about their performance.
So are we ready for my soapbox moment?
Let's go ahead. Let me hear it.
All right. So I'm getting a little tired of what I call DEA porn.
Hold on. So are we getting into close to final ratings?
After this, probably after.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Well, go ahead and give your ratings after the soapbox.
Okay. Yeah, I'm getting tired of DEA porn, where the DEA guys are, we're just trapped in this system, and like you said, we're just trying to push the needle, like you said, like the realistic take is like it's really
the reality.
Tough. The reality, right? It's really tough to stop every drug import because it's kind of like the border is the border, right? It's kind of unguardable in many ways. But like, I don't know, maybe I'm just getting like a little bit more jaded on this front, where it's just like, we over glorify it like this, and when we know it's well documented that these guys take kickbacks sometimes, they actually use this system to profit off, which you know a lot about yourself. So DEA porn is my new term for this now, and I'm getting a little bit tired of it. And I had to dock a whole point because of that for this movie. So
I thought you would have docked a lot more.
No, I don't. I mean, this episode is going pretty long. I don't want to take over the pod here, but I'm
go ahead, man. This is your platform.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not trying to get canceled either. So
no. Come on. I want to hear your thoughts. Tell me what you really think, Chris.
That's what I think. In the context of
no. Really, that was it. Your only issue is just a little bit of shining the light of acting like the victim from the DA.
Okay,
really,
well, also,
that was it.
Okay, also this ending was garbage. Where they.
What was your issue with the ending? I thought it was great.
Because it makes it seem like these are the heroes that we need. Like, are you kidding me? Like, I don't want to cuss, but because look, that scene. If you really objectively look at it, okay, he's he fakes like the tussle, he plants the bug, and then he's smiling like, oh yeah, I got them. Like, it's like, no, you don't, dude. Like,
no, is that trying to make maybe it's just me playing devil's advocate? Was that him trying to glorify like they're the heroes, or like that's what they need, or was it him just trying to get a little bit of vengeance for his partner?
I mean, I would say for the sake of the storyline, you can say vengeance. I would say like it's a very Americanized ending, right? Because if the ending was the reality of to me, the true ending should have been the true
ending should have just been like a scene
Michael Douglas scene, the addict scene.
Oh yeah, it should have just been like a warehouse shipment, like away for somewhere, and just showing like kilos of cocaine. That's what it should have been, if we're being brutally honest.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I guess you're right. In the concept of the story, I don't know if, like you said, it was like they wanted to give this character.
Yeah, I don't know if they were necessarily like overly glorifying or saying their solution. I think it was just, I didn't think it was a strong ending. That's for sure.
Well, I just feel like it was the typical Americanized, and I'm American, so I'm going to say this truthfully. Americanized, like, oh, there's a little dinkle of hope at the end. Like,
there's no hope. No, that's what I'm saying. They should have just showed a warehouse full of cocaine and trucking that was just going everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, we this is again, I go back to Americanized movie because you say hope, and then like it's well documented in Mexico, entire towns. Look, I'm gonna share like a personal anecdote that I actually do have. Hold up before I get into that. Basically, what I wanted to say was that like there's a lot of stories of like how people in Mexico their families are killed, their mothers don't even know where their sons are buried. Like you gotta be. Honestly, I don't want to cuss, but you gotta be kidding me with these kind of endings.
No, I mean, of course, man. I mean, where my dad's from in the state of Zacatecas, right? It's an entire town that used to be very peaceful and great up until around the time where Calderon came in office in 2006. It's called Fresnillo, and now it's sad, man. You just hear about shootings and kidnappings there all the time, and you got residents of this town of about 150 to 200,000 just worried. Go read articles right now. It's really sad.
Yeah, it's yeah. So basically, this little story I know is that when I used to live in a different part of San Jose, you know these probably references, but there was this restaurant and one of the malls there. I don't want to maybe say it, but like basically, it's not that far from where we went to see Birdman. That's the reference there. And I must have been like a kid or like, maybe fifth grade. So I didn't know this, but there used to be, I guess, a waiter that like, cause we used to go like every 2 weeks, every week. Cause my stepdad and mom liked the restaurant. And so, they speak Spanish. So they were talking to the waiter and he was from, I'm trying to like remember what part of Mexico he was from. I want to say it's like, not where like, my family's from, or I think even it's on the other side. It's like towards like the Texas border. And basically, like it's basically the east part of Mexico. But basically, he only came to America to get dollars so he can open a store in Mexico. Because the reality is, for the audience, there are many people who really just want to actually live in Mexico and they're Mexican. Like they don't like
tons, man. I have countless cousins who have talked about it, and they're like, oh, when I retire, man, I'm going back. And they have this. I mean, we know someone who's of a diaspora who dreamed and finally did go back to their country to live, right? And as an adult, but yeah, I know there's tons of people in my like extended family that talk about going back, dream of going back. And so a little bit, it's just like, dude, like you have no business going back because your whole life is. But I get your point.
No, but the reality is that I think this is maybe one of the people who really maybe always had a foot out the door. So he ends up getting like enough dollars. He actually opens a shop.
He went back,
opens the shop. And what ends up happening is, he had been gone for a long time. And what ends up happening is, it actually becomes a successful little business. I don't forget what the shop was. Just think of like something small, but basically a local cartel. I'm going to call him boss.
Be like, yo.
Yeah,
you need protection.
No, not even that. He says, "Oh no." Hey, he goes. This is like legit story. He goes to the store. He tells the guy, "Hey, I like your business. I'm gonna buy it, and I'm gonna
lowball them."
No, not even. He said, like, "I'm gonna give you a fair price. Name your price, and I'll pay it." But the guy was naive. He didn't know he was a local drug boss. So he says, "No, like my dream is to live in Mexico. My dream is to have my family here. My mom's here in this town." I forgot what the town is. I have to ask my mom.
Did he kill him?
No, he didn't kill him. He says, he gives him one warning. He says, like, I'm going to come back tomorrow. And I'm going to ask you again the same question. And if I don't hear a number, I'm not even just going to.
Consequences.
Yeah, I'm not going to pay you anything. I'm just going to take it and maybe something more. And the guy goes like, holy shit, like, this guy's throwing me, like, what the heck is going on? He talks to his mom. He talks to his mom.
Yeah.
And then his mom's like, this is typical Mexican. She goes, pendejo, hits him and says, like, you need to sell the business now because that guy's going to kill us all. And so the next day, the guy comes up and he says, like, oh, so you thought about my offer? He says, yeah. He's like, whatever you want. I mean, I'll give it to you for free. No, seriously, it's so sad, but it's like, I'll give it to you for free if you want. He gives him like, half of what he was going to pay him. Like you said, lowballed him. And, and he starts realizing that the country that he grew up in is definitely different. Like, obviously, there was always these things in the surface.
Wow, how long have you been here in the U.S.?
I have to ask my mom. She probably knows. My guess, I'm trying to remember. It's been a long
time.
Probably
20 years?
I want to say like 10 to 15.
And this is back in the mid 2000s, so you're talking early 90s is when he left. Yeah, that sounds about right.
And so, and to realize how much has changed is that, like, just like in the Sicario that we covered.
So to give you some context of, so my dad graduated college in the early 70s, and so my dad often talks, and I'm jealous because I wish I could have done this. But he talks, it was around 73 that he took him and one of his childhood friends who's from Italy, guys from, I think, close to Sicily, or like that's where his family's from. He grew up in the U.S., right? They both like grew up basically in California, but like I don't know how he convinced them, but he wanted to go along, and so they went for 4 months to Mexico and went all around. They're broke college kids, right? So they had some savings, and they go and they spent 4 months just traveling all around Mexico, sometimes by bus, by like basically hitchhiking, things like that. They talked about how when they were in Mexico City and like Veracruz and some other places, they'd slept on park benches, like just around. And this is the early 70s, right? And so he's like, yeah, my dad. Oh, and that was the other thing. They like went to Cozumel, and this is way before you had like huge resorts, Cancun. My dad went to Cancun in like '73. He's like, dude, there was nothing there. He's like, there were a couple buildings, like there was no resorts, nada. The big thing was like Cozumel. He's like, we got woken up by like a police officer because we were sleeping in the park at like 3 a.m. And that's unthinkable to do of today. It's just like for those of you who don't know, like Mexico had the plaza system, where basically you had your own little drug gangs that peddled in some drug sales, mainly marijuana, in like in the 60s to 70s, and so violence was very localized within your little kingdoms there, right? And like it wasn't just widespread because you had these little factions and they kind of stuck together. And if someone tried to enter your plaza to sell, obviously there were going to be consequences, right? It's kind of like the same thing. It just wasn't as the operations weren't as huge and they weren't necessarily as widespread as they are today. And with a lot of that sort of growth has come a lot of violence. So like back in like you were saying in like the 90s when this guy was like had left Mexico and way before that, it was a lot safer. Now you got to watch where you're going. And I'm not saying it's dangerous everywhere. You just got to watch where you're going and not be stupid if you're going to Mexico.
Yeah, I agree. Just trying, but no. So to tie up the story, basically, so he loses the store, and so like it sucks. But the other thing, what ends up happening to him, this individual, is that so for our audience's context, we've covered Sicario. There is a scene where like when they kill people, they hang them. And in Narcos it happens too. But basically he sees this in the highway and he's walking with his mom and he's like, I don't want my mom to see this. So he's like, turn around, like don't look at this. And she goes, oh, who did they kill now? So that's when it starts clicking in his brain.
It's just becoming normalized.
Normalized, yeah. And so how my mom knows about this story is that like he worked at the restaurant. He left for like a year and a half.
Yeah, and then came back.
And he came back, and that's when she was like, "Wait, I thought you went back to Mexico." And he's just like, this story to me encapsulates maybe the tragedy, is that like he says like, yeah, like I learned the very hard way, and I just retold the whole story. He's like, I learned the very hard way that like my dream of living in Mexico is over, and this is where I'm not. I have to build my life here now. I think that is like, in many ways, it's a good like anecdotal.
Yeah, I mean,
it's tragedy, but it's like I want to see movies about that, not this DEA porn. Like, okay, I don't want to cuss. I'm so close. But anyways, we need some. Hey, you want to talk about diversity? We need some real diverse stories. That's my challenge.
Diverse stories. Oh, you're not a big fan. Oh man, I don't know if you saw this. Did you see the Abba and Preach reaction to the new Disney movie that's coming out?
No.
Oh Lord, and they even talk about this, and I totally agree with them. Where they said they need a diversity of stories. There's a film that's coming out. You're gonna cringe so hard. That Disney's putting out. It's focused on a kid whose like dream is to design sneakers, right? Like, and he like basically he makes his dream come true. But then he meets somebody who's like comes from like a lineage of sneaker designers, like, and she's like a princess, and the whole movie is called Sneakerella, and it's basically a take on Cinderella. I swear to God. I swear to God. This can't be real, dude. I swear to God, you can watch it.
This can't be real, dude.
So it's a take.
This is a joke, dude. This is a joke, right? Are you kidding me? How are you saying this story after I give you like one of the most profound stories you've ever heard in a while, dude? Are you kidding me?
No. Oh no. Why am I saying this? No. Because what I'm saying is like oftentimes in Hollywood you get these garbage takes, and like in this movie, it's like, oh, well, this is a diverse story. We have a couple people who are people of color. Same thing in that movie of like Sneakerella is focused on like black people. But like even Abba Preacher saying, he's like, it's great that we're getting some recognition or some like voices there. He's like, but where's like the good art, the good storytelling? And the one that he brought up, which I do agree, because it's one of my favorite animated shows ever, or the Boondocks. You know, because they had some things to say in there that were unique that you don't see in like sort of like everyday kind of television. You get what I'm saying?
No, I get what you're saying. It's just I can't believe there's a. I just.
Oh yeah, you can watch the trailer. It is the most cringy thing I've ever seen.
That just sounds terrible. I'm not like. That's why
It was so bad. Oh no! Watch the Have Preach reaction. You just see them and they like their veins are about to pop out of their head.
It's too much. It is too much.
Their veins.
But
oh man.
I think now we can get into final ratings. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody knows my gripes with this movie. So it won't become to anybody's surprise that I gave this a 6 out of 10. You know, I don't want to reiterate all my points. But
yeah, I mean, I think the audience kind of understands where you're coming from with this.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I have a lot of issues with this film too. Let me get to some of the positives. I did think there was some great acting in this film. I thought that their choice of picking a city to sort of center the Wakefield storyline, being Cincinnati, I thought that was unique, and I thought that was good. And they definitely, showed like a lot of the decay and sort of the effect of sort of drug usage, drug policy in the United States, and how that really has sort of destroyed certain communities, as it clearly has. You can go to any major inner city, find certain areas that have definitely that the war on drugs has had a pretty big effect on. I thought that Michael Douglas's performance was great, and I really did enjoy the actual, like you were talking about, how they had made it seem so like seamless with the sort of crossing between the Mexico and the San Diego storylines. And I also really enjoyed the color gradients. I thought that was sort of a unique way of breaking up the different storylines, since these were. It would have been hard to sort of make this feel so if they didn't do that. At times, even some of the this was kind of ambitious because it didn't seem kind of disconnected at points. Like I think they could have done some better job, sort of like interweaving some of the storylines. But then again, like the storylines, to your point, they weren't like super strong or unique, and so that was like a different knock. I didn't come out of this thinking like learning anything new from this sort of storyline, right? Or this sort of like topic. It was focused on a lot of cliches, especially from like the DEA side. So, yeah, for me, for like how much money they put into this film and how big a project this was, right? I didn't find this anything like that unique or worthy of sort of a high score. I give it a 7 out of 10. I would have preferred if they made a movie based on the actual miniseries focused on the British story of sort of drug policy and how drugs affect Britain, because in that storyline they actually take a look at sort of the heroin trade in Britain, and one of the main focuses is actually on poppy growers in Afghanistan. I thought that would have been way more unique, really sort of cool and interesting to look at, and there's a lot more to sort of explore there.
It wouldn't have sold. So that's the other thing. I will say this thing. It's very obvious that Hollywood likes to make easy money off these type of movies and shows. Mm-hmm. And that's another critique I have. So, but I'm not gonna.
Sure. I mean, yeah. Why do you think they just try to hammer out different blockbuster Marvel movies that are cookie cutter? Insert major Hollywood superstar who's chiseled and ripped, and let's try sort of numb the audience's mind.
I'd rather them Hollywood do that than.
No, I'm getting sick of it too. I mean, like even Birdman had great takes on that, sort of ripping it.
Yeah, but I'd rather them, like, if we had to have some kind of poisonous culture, I'd rather them do that than like.
No, it's poisonous.
Pumping up the DEA. I mean,
here's it to Hollywood, right? You talking about inclusiveness of diversity? Have better stories, guys. It's ridiculous.
I mean, I've given up on them, so I'm all indie now.
Indie. All right, fair enough. Anyway, sorry. This is our little rant. I knew this was going to trigger Chris. So this is kind of why I picked it. But anyway,
I mean,
we'll...
you got to pick on quality, not trigger. Like, I mean, if we do that, I'm not going to survive this podcast. I mean, what are you going to pick next? Are you going to pick a movie where Wall Street's the hero? I mean, I might as well quit this pod.
Yeah. Basically, I mean, I know how much you love animal spirits, so... That sort of
great
goes along
podcast. Great
that goes
podcast.
alongside the narrative.
Anyways.
Anyway, well, that's it for this week's episode. We'll be sure to pick more movies that are a little higher quality, have better storylines in the future. And if you enjoyed our commentary on this week's podcast, please like and subscribe to our channel. And let us know in the comment section if you have any films that you would like us to review. We'll definitely try to get to those. So anyway, stay tuned to next week, and we're out.